Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope your day is starting off great. Let's start this video with this beautiful image that was shared on the I Choose Canada group by Saroj. I hope I said your name right. And he writes that every year about this time, he makes the point of getting up early because in this particular season, the sunrise aligns the sun with the CN Tower where he lives in Toronto. And he takes these pictures. Thank you for showing it. This video is going to be a little bit difficult for me. I'm going to open up a little bit and have a little heart-to-heart with all of you and talk about something that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't want to talk about or just want to avoid and just carry on with their lives, especially when you make the title of your video, Canada has to prepare for one of the biggest fights it's ever going to face, or Canada's under threat, our sovereignty is at stake. I know, all of us wish that we really didn't have to talk about these topics, but I want to get into it a little bit here because I'm going to present to you some information, just information, and then my point of view that I don't think you get in the mainstream media. I just think the mainstream media, like our media, CBC, CTV, they report things, but in their fanatical desire to appear impartial, they just don't say what is actually happening. They kind of skirt around the issue, especially when it comes to Donald Trump, and just try and interpret, well, maybe this is what he means, or maybe it's just him talking, and they report things and kind of summarize them, but don't really tell you exactly what's going on. And in the case of CBC, a lot of the things that they report, there's no comment section where people can discuss or ask questions. And that's why independent media is so important. And I'm hoping that this channel can continue to grow, that the numbers can keep increasing, because it's just a fact that the more subscribers a channel has, the more relevant it appears. When it shows up on people's feed, people are more likely to click a larger channel because they, I guess, trust it more. And this channel has a lot of potential to keep growing because as my analytics show me, I'll pop them on the screen here, about 3/4 of the viewers watch and enjoy the content but haven't yet subscribed. So I thank you in advance if you do that. So let me get into the topic of this video. Canada is going to face one of the biggest challenges in its history, and Canadians need to get ready for one of the biggest fights we've ever been in. Now, we all know what a challenging situation we're in now, with the United States, led by Donald Trump, imposing tariffs on us, waging somewhat of an economic war against Canada. And I'm here to tell you today, and we're going to have this discussion. I'm looking forward to the comments that you all leave in the comment section. But I think we're just getting started. And I think next year it's really going to blow up more than any of us can imagine now, because next year is when the USMCA CUSMA, our main trade agreement that governs most of our trade between Canada and the United States, is up for renegotiation. And I believe when that happens, Donald Trump will just simply say, CUSMA's over now, we need to renegotiate, and I don't have to follow that agreement anymore. And it's very likely that he will escalate all the actions that we've seen up till now. Remember, all the talk of tariffs and everything that's happening right now is just sector specific and attacking just really a small portion of the Canadian economy when you look at the whole economy as a whole. It's just forestry industry, steel, aluminum, and auto sector. Those are the main sectors that are attacked. Now that's a lot, but it still only represents something like 10 or 15% of the trade that goes on between Canada and the United States. The rest of the 85% of our trade is still free trade governed by the USMCA CUSMA. I believe that's out the window next year, and we're going to be in for the fight of our lives. And Trump's going to call it a negotiation, but really it's going to be more of an economic war on our country. And so I want to share a couple of clips here that I've watched. I've pulled together some information, and they're out there. They're words that the president and some top advisors have used. Our media knows about it, but it doesn't seem like we take it seriously. So let me run a couple of the clips, okay? This is Donald Trump speaking here, specifically about Canada. And I just want you to hear his words. I'm going to try in this video not just to create my own inflammatory rhetoric. The sky is falling. Donald Trump is going to send in the troops. Locusts! We're not going to do that. A little bit of humor there. This is a serious topic, but a little bit of humor. Let's just listen to his words without any embellishment from me. This is Donald Trump.
Look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. So I'd love to see that, but some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state. But a lot of people don't like to play the game because they don't have a threshold of pain.
If we play the game right, it would be 100% chance that Canada becomes a 51st state. But some people don't want to play the game because they don't have the threshold for pain. That's the President of the United States talking, and basically told us exactly what he's thinking. The United States wants to take over Canada. The pain he's talking about is economic pain. The economic pain that it'll cause the United States in order to do this. To go full all-out war economically against Canada. This is a possibility next year when USMCA CUSMA comes up for renegotiation. To tariff our country to the point where trade between the two of us is so severely impacted that it stops, that it craters, that it dwindles to only essential things that companies are willing to actually pay the tariffs when you start talking about 25, 35, 40, 50, 60% tariffs, to crush trade between our countries, which will certainly hurt the United States. It will cause them pain because technically we're their second biggest trading partner behind Mexico. But some of the things that they import from us are essential for their economy. Aluminum is essential, steel, uranium, potash, oil and gas. We have things that they really do need. And going full economic war against us will cause them pain, but it will kill us. So what he's trying to say is that he has a 100% chance of success plan if he's able to carry it out. That would cause them pain, but would destroy us to the point where we would, in his mind, have no choice but to become a 51st state. Some people aren't willing to play the game because they're not willing to put up with that pain. That's what's in his head, all right? I don't know how much that was reported in the mainstream media, but that's my take on what he just said. And I know some of you are probably thinking, now, well, okay, we just need to keep playing the game here, survive as best as we can, diversify, do all the things that I've talked about in this channel and that we're doing. Carry on with our lives. It shouldn't be that much of a problem because Trump won't be around forever. He's probably going to lose the midterms, and by 2028, we'll have someone new in the White House. Now, how many of you believe that that's actually going to happen? Or how many of you think that perhaps that may not be the case? Here's a picture that was taken in the Oval Office. It's a little bit blurry, but it's of the president having a meeting with U.S. lawmakers, top Democrat leaders. And before inviting them into the office, he made a point of putting on his desk Trump 2028 hats. He's just trying to make a joke, right? He's just trying to get under their skin, he's always trying to do that to get the upper hand in any kind of negotiation he's doing. This is just Trump. That's what the media tells us. But is it? Is it just a joke? This is Steve Bannon, and he just recently did an interview with The Economist. I'm going to run you a clip of what he said during that interview. But first, who is Steve Bannon? In 2016, Bannon became the chief executive officer of Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and was appointed chief strategist and senior counselor to the president following Trump's election. He lasted 8 months in this position, but like many people who served Trump, he was then fired. In 2020, Bannon and others were arrested on federal charges of conspiracy to commit mail fraud and money laundering, connected with the We Build the Wall fundraising campaign. According to the indictment, the defendants, including Bannon, promised contributions would go to building a U.S.-Mexico border wall, but instead enriched themselves. Bannon pleaded not guilty. Trump pardoned Bannon, sparing him from a federal trial, but did not pardon his co-defendants. Federal pardons do not cover state offenses, and in 2022, Bannon was charged in New York State court with fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy in connection with the campaign. In February 2025, Bannon pleaded guilty to fraud and was sentenced to 3 years of conditional discharge. Following that, Bannon refused to comply with a subpoena for the January 6th House Select Committee, so was indicted by federal grand jury on criminal charges of contempt of Congress. In July 2022, he was convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison and a $6,500 fine. After losing his appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is Republican leaning, Bannon surrendered to a federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, where he was imprisoned from July to October 2024. So he was a former top Trump advisor on Trump's staff and a criminal. And now he is not on Trump's staff, but is still very influential in the inner circles of the Republican Party and the administration in the U.S. Let me now play you a clip from this interview he did with The Economist recently.
And we have to seize the institutions, seize them and then purge them. We seize the institution, purge them, and that's why you've got guys, it's not the Doge crap. This is serious people like Russ Vought and others that have spent years thinking this whole plan through. We must strike, and we must strike now. I know all the haters hate it, but this is the age of Trump. He's totally redefined politics and power in America. And how did he do that? With no political training, because he was a populist and he was a nationalist at the very moment that if you didn't have populist nationalism stopped the managed decline of the country by the elites of the nation.
And does he need a third term in order to see that job through?
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
So Trump will serve a third term. We need him for one more term to finish the plan. Now, this isn't just some guy that some YouTuber walked down the street and held a microphone in front and says, well, do you think Donald Trump will have a third term? This is The Economist magazine. That was the chief editor of The Economist interviewing Steve Bannon, the guy that I told you who he is. And that's what he said, and you heard what Donald Trump said. And what's been in the mainstream media in Canada? We're worried about, well, Doug Ford released an ad, and the president escalated tariffs by 10% because he was mad. And I have this feeling that we're not taking things seriously enough, or we're just not absorbing the actual information that is right there in front of us. And that we just don't see things as they're unfolding right before our eyes. And I know that we all have lives, and many people are busy taking the kids to school and doing their grocery shopping, and we're going to watch the Blue Jays and carry on with our lives. And a lot of people don't even feel comfortable listening to this stuff or thinking about, well, what are the possibilities? What could actually happen? And that's what these populists and these politicians hope that we don't see. But it's unfolding right before our very eyes. And so how do you raise the alarm, and what can we do? And on this channel, I try to promote a very patriotic, pro-Canada type feeling. And I have to say that our politicians have to do what they do, and they have to try and use diplomacy, right, to keep the arrangements that we have in the United States intact as best they can. And it's a very difficult job for them, as we know from a lot of the videos you've watched, and from just the reports of how things are going with the up and down tariffs and the attacks from Donald Trump and the rhetoric. They're doing the best job they can. We as citizens, and I've promoted this on this channel, we have to stop feeding that machine down south. And the only power we have is and what I mean by feeding that machine down south, is we have to stop at all costs sending any money down there. We have to boycott everything United States. We have to boycott travel to the United States. We have to stop buying cars made in the United States and start buying cars that are made in Ontario, our center of our manufacturing for Canada that's directly under threat. We just, as Mark Carney said in one of his speeches, we can do so much more for ourselves than anyone else can take away. And he realizes this, and that's how he phrases it. I'm telling you specifically what he means is boycott everything in the United States and spend your money here. That's kind of the message that I've given on this channel many times. Now let me share kind of a story with you that it's a little bit painful for me to recount it here, but because it's a personal thing. I just bumped into some people that I've known for a long time as I've been out walking little Marty on his walk. And these are friends, close friends, that I've known for decades, okay? They're very affluent people. They're very successful, very nice people. They happen to be conservative. They're very aligned, staunch conservative voters for many years. That I don't want to say that, I'm not saying that all conservatives are, in this example I'm going to give you, are like this. But my friends, okay? I'm talking about my friends. I'm walking the dog, and I happen to see them going for a walk as well. They don't have a dog, but they're going for a walk. And I said, hey, good to see you. How you guys doing? They said, well, we're really excited because we just booked our trip, and we're heading out next month or a couple of weeks from now. And we're excited about our trip. And I said, well, that's great. Where are you going? Well, we've booked Palm Springs. We're going to Palm Springs for 2 weeks. And the normal thing to say is, oh, that's great. I hope you have a great time down there. But it's me. And, I'm fairly direct. And I just had to say it. I said, well, what causes you to want to go to the United States? I'm actually pretty disappointed to hear that. You could have chosen another destination. And they were a little shocked to hear that from me, right? Because this is just normal conversation. Hi, how are you doing? Really well. Yeah, have a great day. Bye. Casual friends. But I threw it out there. Why would you want to go to the United States? Couldn't you choose somewhere else? And the two of them looked a little shocked that I would say this. And husband and wife, the wife took the lead and started talking to me. Well, we don't see anything wrong with going to the United States. We really like it down there. We're booked our 2 weeks. And I said, really, with all that's going on, I would have thought maybe you'd consider not going and supporting their economy with all the threats and all the rhetoric coming from Donald Trump. I choose Canada, support Canada. And she said to me, well, what has Canada ever done for us? Everything we have is because of our hard work. We can go wherever we want. Fine. And I could have dropped it there, but I did not drop it there. And I said, oh, really? I'm a little surprised to hear that. What do you mean it's all because of your hard work? Canada hasn't helped you at all along the way? Well, everything we have is really because of our hard work, despite the government basically trying to ruin our country. And I didn't let it go, okay? I pursued and I said, well, hold on a second. I mean, I know you guys have done really well and you've both had really successful careers. You got a great family. You live in a really nice neighborhood. You got a very expensive house. You've worked hard and you've done everything right. But don't you give any credit to the situation that you grew up and lived in our country? I could name you 120 countries where if you made the exact same decisions and followed the exact same path that you did here, that you would have emerged in a much different situation. From the extreme of you would have emerged in abject poverty. And in other situations, if you happen to be born in some countries where the two of you may not have been able to be married, where one of you may not have been able to work or get educated or even vote, or in some countries where you would not have had the opportunity to be educated in the field you chose or have the freedom to pursue the careers you wanted to, or in other countries, even if you had made all the exact same choices, you would be living in abject poverty because of the situation or the corruption or the circumstances of that country. Don't you acknowledge any gratefulness for being Canadians and able to live the Canadian dream and get to where you've gone? The country that you live in has had nothing to do with it. It was all because of you. And really, I have to say, they weren't really ready for this conversation. The husband clearly didn't want to say anything, but she continued. She wasn't really prepared, okay? And she says to me, well, we worked hard for everything we have, and there's a lot of deadbeats in this country that didn't succeed, and it's their own fault. And these are friends of mine, and I'm opening up a little bit here, telling you about this conversation. And actually, it does make me feel a little uncomfortable even now. But I specifically spoke to her because I've known her for many years. She had gone through some adversity in her life approximately 10 years ago, where she was battling depression and got a lot of help in our medical field and had to stop working and was off work for many years and was off work collecting benefits from Canada and kind of spiraled for a period of time. And it turned out it was possibly related to, or maybe not related to. Eventually she got diagnosed that she had a tumor in her head, benign, and had to have it operated on and a tumor removed, and then months and months of rehab and therapy to get back on her feet, and emerged from that with a new vigor for life and with newfound happiness. And now they're enjoying their best lives and they're very active. And, you know, I wish her all the best. And she's gone through a lot of adversity. And I just mentioned it to her. I said, you know, there's a lot of places that if you had gone through that struggle, even some places like the one you're going to visit, where you are a person that stopped working for whatever reason and hadn't worked for 2 or 3 years, you may have found yourself in a position where you wouldn't have been able to afford or didn't have the level of health care coverage that you just take for granted here. And when you got to the point where you needed high-powered surgery and therapy, you might have been in a position to have to choose, do you do it, or do you take out a mortgage on your house to afford it? Or do you have to declare bankruptcy when the bills start coming in? You experience that in a country that you just said, you know, that you just offhandedly saying, well, what has Canada ever done for us? And you went through this in our country. Do you not feel any kind of pride or gratitude? Okay, it's just a stupid holiday. You're going to spend $10,000-$20,000 of your money in the United States, but not in the country that helped you through this. That collectively, our country and what all of us contributed, whether we're the most wealthy or the hardest working or right at the bottom, all of us collectively inputted into this country to make it what it is. It could be better, but it's one of the best. So now you're just turning your back and you're going to go support the country that's actively threatening us now? And you don't see anything wrong with that? And she said, well, we're going and we've booked it and we're going. I said, okay, well, yeah, it was good seeing you. And then we just kind of, I kept walking. Wouldn't it be better to just be a dog? Marty was just sniffing and tail wagging and oblivious to the whole thing. And then as soon as we left, was ready to go, chase the ball. And maybe there's a lesson there, right? Maybe there's a lesson there that there he is sleeping over there, and I'm envious of him sometime. But so, okay, why did I tell you that story? It was difficult for me to tell you that story. And I'm not suggesting that my friends are destroying our country, or that they're conservative and they're destroying our country. I probably shouldn't even have mentioned their political affiliation. But what my point is that there are many of us in our country who are oblivious or refuse to absorb or don't see that there's any issue or any problem or anything really happening, to the point where they have the opinion that, well, what has my country ever done for me? And why shouldn't I go to the United States and spend my money now? I've heard all those elbows up things on TV and on the internet. And I don't care for that. And I just played you those clips of those absolutely disgusting, sickening Americans at the beginning. One of them, their president, speaking about our country and the plan that would involve pain. And then one of his top advisors who's instrumental in creating the plan. And mark my words, the plan includes owning Canada, taking over Greenland, taking over the Panama Canal, controlling the Northern Passage, and expanding the United States' influence in the world and ownership and control of the world. And we're the front line. We're that imaginary line that someone drew. That's us, beside the United States. But the complacency of some people to not even understand, acknowledge, or see this. And what's happening in our, we have to stop this from infecting Canada. What's happening in our country is that the same sort of populist, I hate Canada, everything's broken, everything the government's doing is wrong, everything's spiraling out of control. The last 10 years, the government's destroying our country. The rhetoric that's coming, and I'm not going to say conservatives because this is not a conservative ideology. This is a Pierre Poilievre ideology that he's spewing, Mr. Doom and Gloom. That is effective. It's effective. It's mainly effective in infecting people's brains to the point, like these good friends of mine, that they hate their country. They think that the only reason that they're successful and in the upper class of our country, very wealthy in the upper class of our country, the reason that they've achieved the status in their life and have the life they have is all because of their hard work, despite and even though our country is terrible and this is a horrible place. Despite Canada being broken and terrible and horrible, they've been able to have a great life. How does a brain balance and those two things? How does a brain accept both at the same time? That the country's horrible and broken and everything's out of control and everything's terrible. Hey, but I've done pretty good myself. And I can do whatever I want with my money. I can go down there and inject it into the U.S. economy, because what has the U.S. ever done against Canada? We're our own enemy in some people's minds. And I just can't justify and reconcile those two things. We have a lot of work to do here in Canada. We need to be united and together going forward. And I hope that Canada doesn't accept this negativism, and because what it's designed to do is pit us against each other and divide us against each other. Well, one team wanting to win by just painting the other team as terrible and horrible, pitting Canadian against Canadian in a time where we absolutely need to be united. So I would hope that our politicians, because our politicians have heard Trump say what he said and this Steve Bannon say what he said, and countless, I could show you a dozen other clips that will paint the story even more effectively than what I'm doing in this video. Our politicians know this stuff. I hope that they would just put political differences aside now and just work together for the benefit of our country, united, debate things, work out things, and push things forward together and stop this negative doom and gloom infighting. And I have to say, in Canada, mainly coming from only one person, okay? Only coming from Pierre Poilievre, not coming from the Conservative Party as a whole. Well, maybe 2 or 3 people in that party. I hope we can just not let that infect us. Because, mark my words, what I'm trying to get across in this video is that Canadians, a lot of us are complacent right now, and I know this tends to happen before a crisis really hits. It's usually right when after the crisis hits, when it's almost too late. that everyone rises to the occasion. And I think Canadians will rise to the occasion. But mark my words, I believe that we are going to be in the fight of our lives next year. Our governments fighting for our very survival versus the United States when triggered by the USMCA CUSMA renegotiations. It's not going to be just a few diplomats sitting down across the table and saying, well, which clauses should we review? What can we add? It's not going to be a amicable discussion and tweaking of a few things. It's going to be led by Donald Trump's bombastic brain blurting out whatever he wants to, basically following a script and a plan that's devised by people like that guy I just showed you in that clip that says Donald Trump's going to be elected to a third term. We've got a plan. And there is a plan. And there is a plan of how to deal with Canada. And Trump will be the mouthpiece, the kind of like the divine leader of this plan. He'll be the attack dog and he'll blurt the stuff out. And everyone else, the negotiators and the Republicans that he controls, will carry out his plan, depending on how much pain they want to endure. It's going to be difficult. I predict that it's going to be a direct attack on us economically. I'm not saying there's going to be tanks crossing the border, but it's going to be an economic attack on our country, probably like we've never seen before. And we're going to need everyone united politically to diplomatically deal with that. But as far as Canadians go, individually, me and you and my friends who are going to be down in Palm Springs enjoying the sun, and everyone else, we need to drop the gloves and get ready to stand up for ourselves and our country. And the only thing that we can do is what I've promoted on this channel many times, is boycott everything United States, stop buying their cars, stop going on vacation there, stop buying products of theirs in the grocery store or anywhere else, because sending our money there fuels their economy. It fuels the revenue of their government that comes from the taxation of their economy. It fuels the Republican Party and the MAGA movement. All right, that's the engine, is their economy. That's what we as individuals can hurt, and hurting their economy will cause dissent in their country from the population, and maybe the United States, some of the 100 million of them that never voted before, can wake up one day in the next election and go and do the right thing and vote for a change. That's all we can do. We have to vote with our wallets and stop funding that country, the country that is the biggest threat to our country ever, I guess. When was there a bigger threat to our country? I guess in 1812 there was a big threat to our country when the Americans wanted to take us over then. And the British Army marched down, crossed the border into Washington, and burned down the White House. And that put an end to that. That's our history. There's been no other country that's invaded Canada. So I just want to put that out there, because I know these things are difficult to talk about. And our mainstream media, like I said, in their passionate, just pathetic pursuit of trying to appear nonpartisan and independent and balanced, will just not talk about these things. They'll just say, well, Donald Trump said this, but maybe he meant this. Well, that's just Trump. I wanted to present this for you. Thanks for hanging in there and watching the whole video. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. And if you want to support my independent work on a monthly basis, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. I appreciate and thank you all in advance who have supported this channel. The numbers are growing. It's nice to see that. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everyone. And I'll catch you all on the next one.